But if you told me that this was among the most moving or profound songs on it, I wouldn't be in the least bit surprised. And if you told me it wasn't, I'd cut off this meeting right now and go listen to the fucking thing, because if there's shit on here that's more profound than this, I need to hear it now. Hey, everybody out there. Welcome back to another episode of the Audiophiles. I'm Andy. That's John over there. And we get together, exchange music and bullshit. So, John, let's commence this party. What is the track and who is the artist?
So we're going back to a artist that we've done a few times. We're basically taking a track from each of her albums. It's PJ Harvey.
When you said her, you got my hopes up and then you pulled through. So awesome. So we're well into the 2000s at this point. Well, I don't know. I just know that the last couple have been more recent. So, and as you've described, we're going in sequential order. So we're getting into our more recent stuff. Okay, cool.
Yep, this is
Um,
the penultimate song in the list. This is yeah, from her ninth album, and she's done 10 studio albums. So yeah, second to last.
awesome.
That's what
Okay.
penultimate means. So yeah, the track is called The Ministry of Defense.
The Ministry of Defense. Okay, cool. That's an interesting name. Evocative. Already starting to get thoughts. Let me go off and give it a go, and I'll come back and let y'all know what I think.
This is the ministry
Mm.
of defense. Stairs and walls are all that's left. Mortar holes let through the air. Kids do the same thing everywhere.
Hold on. I'm gonna stop it right there and take a breath. Really interesting, forceful chugging motif. That dun 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 dun. That half beat, quarter beat kind of pause in between the fourth and the fifth note there. It just adds. It's just from the word go. It just got tension all over it. And it's winding up, and then her voice comes in, and she instantly like goes up into that sort of falsetto region before coming back down as she goes through the lines, all of which kind of work together to illustrate a very worn, torn area. You know, holes in the mortar. All that's left are like walls and stairs. This doesn't sound very promising. And she opens with, this is the Minister of Defense, or the Ministry, pardon me, of Defense, which is, all right out of the gate. You're like, okay, this sounds like it's probably going to be about war or decisions made about war. And it sounds like that's firmly where we've landed. I do like how the tension lends itself to the same kind of feeling or essence of like war. That dun 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 dun. That's like being hit with a barrage of like missile strikes or artillery shells or something like that. That's what it conjures up in me. Maybe the name and a few of these words have kind of jaded or influenced my perspective, but it has that feel to it to me. I'm going to pull this back and let that kind of go through again. It's not that long of a song, folks.
This is the ministry of defense. Stairs and walls are all that's left. Mortar holes left through the air. Kids do the same thing everywhere. They spray graffiti in Arabic and balance sticks in human shit.
Even that extended pause after that last line in the chorus before, I assume we're transitioning back into the... Maybe it'll repeat the chorus or maybe it'll go into the next verse. I don't know. But either way, this sort of pregnant pause, again, is a mechanism to add tension. The silence often makes you wary of when the shoe will drop. And that's what's happening. And maybe it's not a shoe. Maybe it's a bomb. So that's definitely what it's kind of stirring up in me. And speaking of being stirred up in me, these lyrics, graffiti scrawled in Arabic, and sticks being balanced in human shit sounds pretty awful. And it sounds like these are really vivid images that stir in you a visceral reaction, a lot like images of war, which I already have kind of, spinning around behind the eyes here. So yeah, this is really interesting stuff, and she is, her delivery is lovely. The sort of war march feel of that chorus, the music, the way the snare rolls are happening, and this sort of chant like it's a collective, like an army, all kind of conjures visions of military action. So I pretty clear that's what she's going for, and it's pretty clear that she's doing a good job of conveying that.
This is the ministry
of remains. Fizzy drinks, scans, magazines.
and magazines.
Broken glass, white trombone, syringes, razors, plastic spoon, human hair, kitchen knife, ghost of a girl runs and hides, scratched in the wall in borrowed pen.
It's breaths.
This is how the world will end.
Oh, okay. We're gonna take this back a little bit. Whatever that was is interesting me, and I want to hear how that unfolds. But again, got to talk about some of these images that she's alluded to here. I mean, from the allusions to like fizzy drink cans and magazines, which just seems like well, also human shit. So literal and figurative shit being strewn about. I mean, everything is in disrepair. Again, you'll see these things in the wake of war. Then just that stream of consciousness, like, I Spy with my little eye list of things that she went through, along with her backing vocalist, where it's like a white jawbone, a razor, a syringe, human hair. All of that stuff is like super unsettling. And yes, for me, I have to imagine for most people, it just stirs in you this instant, like, ugh, kind of reaction. And it gives you a real case of the icks. So, it's a lot to take in. It's heavy fucking content that she's discussing here, and it's not like what she's talking about is alien to anything that's happening right now. In fact, it's wildly apropos, which is probably part of the reason why I'm finding it so unsettling. So let's pull this back a little bit, because I'm a glutton for punishment, apparently, and like to be made to feel uncomfortable. These breaths, even like I'm sorry, the breaths, and then there's like this solid, like one solitary, like very rudimentary beat, like it could be a heartbeat, and the breaths and the pounding of the heart is like someone waiting for the next bomb to fall, or they're the unwanted anticipation of what comes next, and that's what it feels like, and you begin to, like, this is a one of the individuals affected by the war that you're listening to in the midst of their horror.
This is how the world will end.
Oh, this rooted horn stuff.
Is the bus depot
There's the bus depot to the right.
to the right?
Level like a building.
A building size.
Those are the children, cries from the dark. These are the words under the arch, scratched in the wall, borrowed pen. This is how the world will end.
Ugh, good God. Yeah, I mean, that's heavy shit. You hear something like that, and the last thing you want to use is the word good. So I'm going to try to dodge that, and this is an incredibly descriptive song that really does illustrate, I think, the horrors of war and these. It doesn't explicitly say so in the song, but I mean, this is something that is just, you copy and paste it throughout intervals of 15 years or so, if that, throughout human history, and certainly modern human history, where there's this much destruction going on. Say what you will about, the Civil War here in the States, or just going at each other, hacking each other with swords and dodging the occasional arrow. But this full-blown city leveling kind of warfare that we're now capable of is some of the most awful shit mankind has ever drummed up, if not the most awful. The amount of total carnage and chaos that it can cause, and oftentimes, if not almost exclusively, uh, to civilian life, to those who had nothing to do with the politics or the geopolitics that or religion that inspired the war. It's just really, you know, upsetting. And yet here is the song that I think really artfully depicts all of it. It's hard to not think of what these war criminals like Putin and Netanyahu and Hamas are doing around the world right now, and to not envision places like Donetsk or Luhansk or the West Bank and Gaza when you hear this stuff, because it's on the news, it's everywhere, and it's real people are being affected by these horrible atrocities. I don't want to get on a soapbox. I'm sorry, but this is what she's talking about, right? So I think, like, how am I supposed to avoid it? Anyway, this was a really great performance. Really, I loved the way the music acted as a vehicle to depict all the scenes that she was kind of describing as she went through the song. I also appreciate that for the most part the choruses changed lyrically, as to not desensitize us as the listener by the third time we got to it. You know what I mean? Like, new unsettling imagery was unfolding in each stanza, new to us, which made it one more hard to digest thing that we weren't ready for, having not yet heard it. So, as subtle as that decision is, I think it's really important, because she kept the uncomfortable coming, and being uncomfortable is usually what is the first impetus for change. So, another reason why it's okay to feel uncomfortable, I suppose. Yeah, this was a great listen, great pick by John. I think he knew I'd probably like this one given the subject matter and some of our conversations on and off camera. Yeah, I'd be really interested to learn. I'm sure this is, given where we are in her timeline, and that is the trajectory that we've strictly followed. I would imagine that this is something that came later in her discography. So I'm sure he'll be able to confirm that for me. I just can't wait to discuss the subject matter in general with him. So let's get back to John.
Pinot Grigio is back. So you've had to listen to PJ Harvey, the Ministry of Defense. What do you think of this one?
Well, for the record, I'm a Pinot Noir kind of guy. I don't like those white wines, but this was, God, what? It's so hard when you want to describe something as powerful as it is, but you don't want to fall into that crutch of being like, it's good or it was great, because it's talking about such shit that is not, that you don't even want to come close to touching that or being misconstrued or whatever. But this was a really, really powerful track. And I really, God, see, I don't even want to say enjoyed listening to it. The experience was fulfilling in its own way. And that's like the best way I can put it.
It's pretty moving, isn't it?
It is. But at this, you know what I mean? You don't want to fawn over something that is so deplorable. So it becomes awkward and uncomfortable, but that's exactly what her intention was. And like I said in the reaction, discomfort is usually the very first impetus, for change. Because that's when you start to be like, I don't like it here. And you want to do something about that discomfort. So she was successful, wildly successful in sort of capturing that in this track. The song begins with some ominously distorted, really powerful guitars, as you would often describe this kind of sound as masculine. And it's got that feel to it. And it's this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it's like this quarter or half beat between the fourth and the fifth that is really odd, and it's already ominous, but that adds more like ominous tension to the mix, the little extra half beat or whatever it is. um and I don't know if it's the name coming into play here and influencing my perception, but it almost feels like the encroachment of some massive war machine. The way it's pounding and trotting, in my head, unmitigatable. There's nothing you could do to stop this. Um, and soon PJ starts singing, and right out of the gate, she notifies us that this is the Ministry of Defense. And during this delivery, her voice shifts into this airy falsetto for a moment before it dips, sort of back down, and she falls back out of them. And I just love the way her voice sounds during this delivery. Um, and she does this pretty much with every line of the verse or verses throughout this song. Her voice fills the void left between the renditions of that pounding and aggressive motif on the guitar that continues to occupy the soundscape. And as the verse unfolds, she describes what sounds like war-torn arenas, where all that's left are walls and stairs and mortar holes through which light can pass.
This is no spoiler here, so this is written in 2016. But
Yeah,
doesn't
okay.
it straight away? I just think of the images of Gaza right now.
Ooh, you're taking some of my stuff right out of my gob here. So yeah,
Oh, there you
but
go.
I'm right there along with you without question. And not just Gaza, but yeah, that's definitely one of the two major um things that are coming to mind when this song was kind of unfolding. Especially, I mean, she makes direct allusion to Arabic writing. That doesn't stop one from still going to, Ukraine in your mind and seeing some of
Yeah,
the
yeah.
images coming out of there as well, but nonetheless. So things shift a bit as we're introduced to this snare that seems to be tapping its way into frame as the backing vocalists join her in delivering the next bit of lyrics. The dystopian lyrics persist as she leads the collective voices in describing the Arabic graffiti and sticks balanced in human shit. This is awful, grotesque stuff, and it really does stir visceral feelings inside you when you hear them. At the end of this line, and those pounding chords, they deploy this pregnant pause, which only acts to build up even more of that tension between the parts of the track. Similar to what I would imagine the uneasy feeling is like when you're waiting between bomb strikes in the middle of a campaign. And you don't know how far or close to where your exact location they'll fall and what the repercussions of those bombs will be, but it's that you're just helpless and just waiting. And that's sort of like, for a moment, not to compare my experience listening to this to what it's like, but I think she's trying to recreate through music their feelings and their experiences. Uh, the next verse kicks off, this time equipped with that rattling snare and backing male voice who responds to PJ's falsetto laden delivery. His is almost like from the podium or balcony, like some sort of war manifesto is being delivered by some powerful political figure or something like that. I thought that was a really interesting touch as well. And they keep it fairly brief and succinct with only two lines, both of which are repeated. This is the Ministry of Defense. Oh, no, pardon me. This is the Ministry of Remains and fizzy drink cans and magazines, which again is like this real time stream of conscious observational look at all the shit I'm seeing after destruction kind of thing. So yeah, that was again powerful in its own right. These are while this verse is really brief, like I mentioned, the words paint a fairly vivid scene of some of the remnants of the war. We then get treated to another chorus, this one longer and more unsettling than the last, wrought with even more vivid and disturbing imagery like broken glass, a white jawbone, syringes and razors, human hair, um, and the ghost of a girl who runs and hides, just to name a few of examples of this laundry list, again, of this sort of stream of consciousness I'm looking and seeing type thing. The chorus ends on the foreboding line about the aforementioned ghost girl scrawling on the wall, "This is how the world will end." But before PJ delivers that line, the empty void where once resided the uncalm silence of anticipation is now occupied by short, choppy breaths that only act to amplify the same unsettling aura of anxious waiting. There's also a lone drum that's almost like the individual's heartbeat. And it's so weird because I mentioned the idea of like the heart beating or a clock, the passage of time in that track that she collaborated with Tom York on. And again, she's kind of using something similar here years later, and in a completely different environment and setting. So that kind of was like, that's a mechanism that I've at least seen twice out of the woman. So that's pretty impressive stuff. Um, After the chorus ends and before the lyrics of the subsequent and final verse commence, the soundscape is littered with that chunky guitar and pounding drums, and the intervals of space between are populated with these dramatic discordant horns that really enhance this off-kilter scene being painted in the song. It was really unsettling, which again is a mechanism that I'm sure is done with absolute intent. I mean, it can't not be, but it only underscores the genius of some of the stuff that's happening beyond just the prose of the lyrics. You know what I mean? So really digging that. The final verse begins, and structurally it's the same as the previous, though lyrically it is different in that she and her spoken word companion tell of a bus depot to the right that's been leveled like a building site. So it looks like as if a building is about to be erected, not one that was just destroyed. You know what I mean? That's also really vivid, paints a picture. The song is then capped off with another chorus, and it's at this point I have to recognize and applaud Harvey for not cutting and pasting the lyrics like in many choruses we hear in other songs. Here she allows the choruses to continue to convey the hellscape that are theaters of war, which combats the opportunity for the listener to become desensitized to the havoc unfolding. New vicious scenes require new visceral reactions. And I appreciate her not allowing us to look away by simply repeating the same stanzas or checking out because we already know it's going to come. It's new and it's uncomfortable and it's constant. Though she and her backing vocalist do dismount by repeating what is perhaps the line with the most profundity from this song, a song riddled with profundity. Scratched in the wall in, and I've wrote parenthetically, some sort of, because I didn't catch the word, pen, "This is how the world will end." So this is punctuated by that choppy guitar and the drum motif and shallow rhythmic breaths before the song comes to an end. So yeah, man, talk about heavy fucking lyrical content, and just enough musical devices and tricks to help illustrate the subject matter and mayhem involved. This woman doesn't miss. I know that there are some albums out there that are better than others, and I'm sure that there have to be, because of that, some tracks out there that are better than others. But I would find it hard to believe that if you went to any one of her albums, there wasn't a shining, example of her genius waiting to be heard and experienced. And I think I don't know the rest of this album, but if you told me that this was among the most moving or profound songs on it, I wouldn't be in the least bit surprised. And if you told me it wasn't, I'd cut off this meeting right now and go listen to the fucking thing, because if there's shit on here that's more profound than this, I need to hear it now. So yeah, I couldn't help but think of the war crimes being administered by Putin, Netanyahu, and Hamas as the song unfolded. Literal images of the Donetsk and Luhansk region of Ukraine, and of course the West Bank and Palestine flooded my head while listening to this. So for me, it is inarguable that this track landed squarely the way Harvey intended. What an incredibly poignant song. The only thing that is like, not the only thing, there's a million things, Branch. Probably the thing that annoys me the most is that you said this was written in 2016. It could have been written in the 1990s. It could have been written in the 1970s, the 60s, and it could have been, unfortunately, written now. And another thing that struck me as we were going over the images that she was talking about here is that, like, I've heard other songs talk about war, and I've read stupid amounts of history books about wars that have taken place. And I know that the Civil War was one of the bloodiest, if not from a casualty standpoint, the bloodiest war that ever took place on soil. But you can't underscore how fucking awful modern warfare is. There is something really savage about just walking towards one another with either front-loaded muzzles with bayonets mounted to the end, or just hacking at a motherfucker with a axe or a sword. Yeah, that's gory, but it's 1-to-1. You can level an entire city in a half of a day. And oftentimes when you do that, not oftentimes, every fucking time you do that, you're taking out more innocents than you are those who are guilty. And that becomes a bigger atrocity than whatever it was that sparked this geopolitical altercation or this religious-based tiff that it mushroom clouds into. So, yeah, war's fucking awful. Modern warfare is the worst version of it because of the amount of, hell that can rain on Earth when it takes place. And this song, I think, illustrates it perfectly. So, go ahead, John.
Yeah, thanks for that, Andy. Yeah, really interesting. Just on the one point, it's just today, really. I was driving the car, had the news on, and was thinking about doing this evening, and what you make of this song, and the reports on the radio of the massacres in Sudan today. This is the real thing that struck me, was in the Darfur region, the Rapid Support Forces bragging about their massacres, and they were saying from space, satellites could see the blood on the territory with the bodies. That's how much they were doing, and you just think that is a new low, that there's so many people massacred that you could see the blood in the earth from space.
Yeah.
And it just made me think, about this, and obviously. So let's get into it. It's really interesting. It's really, really great album, actually. Not without its controversy or controversy. Anyway, so as we said before, we are taking a track from each of our albums in chronological order. This is the 9th album. There is a playlist with all the ones of the episodes we've gone through so far, to a little bit about what's going on in each episode rather than recapping her whole career, etc. She's ace. That's all you need to know. And if you want to go back and discover more, go and look at it, and there'll be a link below here to the playlist, etc. So this comes from the Hope 6 Demolition Project, which is the 9th studio album by PJ Harvey, and was released in April 2016. The album's title is a reference to the Hope 6 projects in the United States, in quotes, where rundown public housing in areas of high crime rates have been demolished to make room for better housing, but with the effect that many previous residents can no longer afford to live there, leading to claims of social cleansing and gentrification. The Hope 6 program is directly referenced in the album's opening track and the second single for the album, The Community of Hope, and it's an excellent song. I think you would find this whole album fascinating because there's a lot of politics in there. So the title of the album was inspired by PJ Harvey's trip to Washington DC with photographer stroke filmmaker Seamus Murphy, where she was given a tour by Paul Schwartzman of the Washington Post, who directly influenced some of the lyrics in the song. So this album, personnel, PJ Harvey, vocals, guitar on this track and throughout the album, tenor sax on this track, alto sax as well, violin, bass, harmonica, auto harp, hand claps, piano and shaker. John Parrish backing vocals, guitar and percussion on this track in particular. Keyboards on this track as well. Variophone, accordion, mellotron vibes, baritone guitar and synth, bass, auto harp, hand claps, piano and synthesizer, bass and drums. Blood, production, backing vocals on this track, synth bass and Sonic Maverick. Mick Harvey, backing vocals on this track, percussion on this track, Taurus pedals on this track, slide guitar, keyboards, bass, guitar and hand claps, and Jean-Marc Butti, backing vocals and percussion on this track and throughout the album. And guest musicians for this track, a certain Linton Kwesi Johnson, vocals. So he was the other vocalist you heard. He's also known as LKJ and is a Jamaican-born, British-based dub poet and activist. In 2002, he became the second living poet and the only black one to be published in the Penguin Modern Classics series. His performance poetry involves a recitation of his own verse in Jamaican patois over dub reggae, usually written in collaboration with reggae producer artist Dennis Bovell. So there you go. That's him. Also on this track, there was Mike Smith doing keyboards and sax and backing vocals, and Elaine Johannes doing guitar and sax as well. So Harvey wrote the songs for the Hope 6th Demolition Project, as well as her poetry book, The Hollow of the Hand, during her travels to Kosovo, Afghanistan, and Washington, D.C. It feels bad to lump DC in with the other two, but with Seamus Murphy. And she did this between 2011 and 2014. Really interestingly, the album was created in sessions which were open to the public as part of an art installation at Somerset House in London called Recording in Progress. The sessions were 45 minutes each in length, and they lasted for a month. Beginning 16th of January 2015, include on 14th of January, Valentine's Day 2015. Viewers could get tickets, and then they could see Harvey create the album through one-way glass with producers Flood and John Parrish in the studio and whoever else happened to be there, Nick Harvey, whatever. So I think that's really fascinating and quite ballsy to just do that. I mean, I'm sure if I'd have known about it, I didn't know about this, I'd have raced down there to see it. I think it'd be amazing to just watch them ass around. It's just like that. Get back with the Beatles, see them in the studio just pissing around. I could watch that for 8 hours apparently. Anyway, mobile phones and devices with recording capabilities were confiscated before entering, and viewers were led into a basement level room. During the first viewing, she was working on a song called Near the Memorials to Vietnam and Lincoln, which is featured on the album. Harvey was reportedly playing violin, harmonica, and hurdy-gurdy. It was also reported that she was joined by musicians Terry Edwards and James Johnson, and that Seamus Murphy was in filming the entire session. So, yeah, really interesting. On its release, the opening track and the second single, The Community of Hope, drew criticism directly from politicians running for the council seat in Ward 7 in Washington, D.C., with former D.C. Mayor Vincent C. Gray, I don't know, I'm sure he's a lovely chap, saying, "I will not dignify this inane composition with a response." And his campaign treasurer, Chuck Thies, insulting Harvey by saying, "PJ Harvey is to music what Piers Morgan is to cable news." I could not think of two more disparate people.
Yeah, right.
But anyway,
the opposite ends of the spectrum. One doesn't have a spine and never takes a solid stance that he isn't willing to turn away from, and the other one is married to her beliefs.
yeah, exactly. Grant Thompson, a pastor and former congressional staffer running for the Ward 7 council seat, stated that Harvey needs to see more of the city. But there you go. At times, their Hope 6 Demolition Project's lyrical content was criticised for being political without literally proposing government policy. Now, Pitchfork has a very, very low bar when it comes to shitty reviews and stupid comments. But I think this one is probably the most idiotic comment I've ever heard from any publication.
Lay it on me.
Laura Snapes from Pitchfork said, "By pointing out the problems in these three communities, but proposing no solutions, is she, Harvey, just as responsible for their desertion as the global powers that came before her?"
Fuck you. No.
So you're not allowed to point out any problems unless you have a solution. Otherwise, you are just as responsible as the people who created that problem.
Yeah.
Unfucking believable.
It is. It is.
That's an amazing comment, isn't it? That's really someone who wants to grind an axe for no apparent reason there. I'm not going to like this no matter what. Anyway, the album debuted at #1 in the UK albums chart. It sold 11,436 copies and became PJ Harvey's first #1 album in the UK.
Wow.
Apparently, it plummeted out down to number 23 the next week, and is the biggest drop ever of a number one album. But anyway, that's beside the point. People turned up for the first week, just like the old Smiths when they release a single. It'll go straight in at number 7, and then it'll be number 58 the next week. Since all the fans bought it in 1 week and then fuck it off.
Yeah.
But anyway, at the 59th Annual Grammy Awards, the album was nominated for Best Alternative Music Album, a 4th nomination in that category, and a 7th Grammy nomination overall. The reviews are pretty good. The Guardian said the Hope Six Domination Project, PJ Harvey's latest album, is best understood as a kindred sort of reportage, one delivered via guitar, saxophone, and gospel choir. That's not to say it hasn't got some tunes. Near the memorials to Vietnam and Lincoln nags, and the magnificent The Ministry of Defense grabs your lapels with its apocalyptic chords and Harvey's sinuous vocal melody, simultaneously accusative and minxish. Dazed website, interesting. They did a whole piece on the album. They broke it down, the themes of the album, into 4 key areas, which they described as witnessing and telling, addressing the refugee crisis, social cleaning and gentrification, and war, colonization, and capitalism, which is quite a big area for the last point. Across these songs, Harvey exhibits the verse of T.S. Eliot. On the Ministry of Defense, she echoes Eliot's poem, The Hollow Men, repeating the phrase, "This is the way the world ends." Through his historical criticism, Harvey maintains that the hollow men that dictate order are responsible for the cultural and spiritual mess we found ourselves in. Eliot appends the destruction will come not with a bang but a whimper. But Harvey's words are less passive. She draws a line in the sand and calls them a sham for not learning a lesson. Speaking of which, the lyrics, as you did a pretty good job of filling in most of them, but I shall give you the whole lot. This is the Ministry of Defense. Stairs and walls are all that's left. Mortar holes let through the air. Kids do the same thing everywhere. They're spraying graffiti in Arabic and balance sticks in human shit. This is the Ministry of Remains. Fizzy drinks cans and magazines. Broken glass, a white jawbone, syringes, razors, a plastic spoon. Human hair, a kitchen knife, and a ghost of a girl who runs and hides. Scratched in the wall in biro pen. This is how the world will end. And I put in here, sax blasts. And then back in, there's the bus depot to the right, levelled like a building site. Those are the children's cries from the dark. These are the words written under the arch, scratched in the wall in biro pen. This is how the world will end. And someone put a note on there that, like a musical journalist, PJ Harvey describes the apocalyptic horror she witnesses on a trip to Afghanistan. So that's what she's describing. Yeah. But it could be many of the other places that we've already spoken about. So yeah, really powerful piece. It's quite stunning, really. The album's great. I mean, her worst album is a 7.5 out of 10. Do you know?
Right.
8 probably. It's just a standard so high. So yeah. But yeah, this is the belter. I quite enjoy the fact that she got a bit of criticism and a bit of controversy. You know, put some people's noses out of joint. You know, I imagine
It also, John, it puts it, once those people who criticize it show their ass, it lets everybody know who the enemy is, you know, or who has at the very least their motives misplaced or their morals diluted. So, fuck those people.
Yeah, it's just it wouldn't have sat well for the political classes of Washington DC to have things pointed out to them by a limey. But there you go. And a woman at that as well. Yeah. But yeah, so really, really interesting. Great song. Really good album as well. Really fascinating stuff. And the way she had got some criticism from the reviewers saying that it was too sort of reportage and matter of fact, but no, I think it's fantastic the way she delivers it.
Are you supposed to beat around the fucking bush when you're talking about this stuff? Get out of here.
Anyway, I shall wrap things up. Thanks for listening to Sandy.
Thank
Folks
you.
out there, please tell us what you think. If you like this, do hit the like button and go check out the others on the playlist. Drop some comments. We'd love to hear from you. This song, this album, anything about PJ. And I'd love you already put comments about how great she is, and I totally concur. If you haven't subscribed already, please do. We really appreciate everybody to support the channel as we're moving onwards and upwards. That being said, thanks again so much for watching. I will see all of you on the next episode of The Audiophiles.
See you later, guys.